You do not have to like religion, but this is why it is a good thing. If common beliefs remain a particular way for generations, it is for a very good reason. Religion has very efficiently helped millions of people just by saying, "Do not worry, everything is in God's hands." On the other hand, the way anything as big as religion becomes less of a big deal is by duplicating it, repeating it, or parroting it, overusing it until it is exposed as a lack of original thought to the point of ignoring it. And this only happens when conversation is surface level. The subject doesn't get very far. When something is made too common, you become numb and confused by it. Religion is an incredible and inspiring work of art that is even a historic astrological story. The magnificence of it all is also the very reason why everything can be explained. Religions use rituals and affirmations to point things out to us and lodges it in our fickle minds. Affirmations is just another word for praying. It is to force us to verbally or physically do an action to significantly influence our focus on something specific, so that we do not take it for granted, like being grateful for the food we eat. Religions know that intelligence is not a common suit for the majority of people, and by providing a substitute story about God, it lessens the difficulty to grasp that initially was the most complicated thing for mankind to fathom. It was intended for the greater good. Rather have man attempt to understand God than never be able to even figure it out. So they carefully appeal to us via art and beauty. We think of beauty in one category, of which is frivolous and a superficial thing, and truth and depth in a separate category. Religions join these two things together and build temples, cathedrals, mosques that use the beauty to lend depth to important ideas. They use resources of art to remind us of what really matters. Their art is didactic, meaning intended to teach human decency by making themselves known in as many areas of life as possible by offering an alternative quality of education. And so, religion is directed at our core biology of emotions, making us feel more intensely, rather than being strictly intellectual. So there is a well-known parable. After a serious head injury accident, suddenly one person starts painting amazing pieces of art in a wonderful way. But that was only one person. 1,000 other people will never recover from that kind of injury and even pass away from it. Or those that survived lived on in a much diminished way. Whenever a pleasant accident happens, we say it is destiny, God's will, or God's plan. So being accidentally fortunate is not the way to exist. Destiny is also an excuse or insurance to accept failure. This is not the fundamental nature of religious culture. It was taught from ancient times. Your life is your karma, which means your life is your making. Nobody told you there is any interstellar control over you. What religion teaches us is not about what is true. It is about what many of us here on earth desperately want to be true, for pretty understandable reasons. When a loved one is sick, you may very well end up believing in miracles Because at the end of the day, under immense psychological pressure, you love someone so dear, more than you care about the laws of nature. It takes more than just an enduring mind on top of the overwhelming sadness, not to imagine that somehow your loved ones are still around in a better place looking down on us as we go about our daily lives, hoping we are forgiven and understood for what we perhaps never find a way to say to them. And when you are in a complete mess and all you want to do is cry in shame, you might start to long for someone wise with kind, sympathetic eyes who won't judge, similar to an ideal mother. These beliefs are signs of extreme emotional distress and desperation, coming from a very tender and vulnerable place, which should trigger in us understanding, sympathy, and empathy for others. You have to understand and appreciate the intensity and longing that lead some of us to believe in fantasies against all odds, because reality is sometimes just unbearably painful. The reason religion is a bad thing, just like everything else has a good and bad thing about it, is because it gets you complacent or content with what you know, and then you are against everyone else. If the world wasn't always in retaliation with each other, religions with different religions, or if you are against religion completely, you would actually stop and learn something. But most religious people don't know that the story of religion is a metaphor for God. It is meant to help you understand what God is by personifying God. For example, how do you explain life lessons without forcing facts on people? You give them a story about God if they do not understand what God is. It is said you cannot convince somebody that they are wrong by simply giving them all the facts. But a good story or multiple stories, also known as metaphor, will do all the convincing on its own. But then what goes wrong is people mistake the symbol for what is being symbolized. So the world has gotten into such a bad habit of staying alive, really, that you subconsciously don't hold yourself accountable anymore. Other people or things have to hold you accountable. And that is why most conflict is necessary, because words are not enough. Unfortunately, when you hold anything dear to you in life, you are naturally ignoring other important things. Life is so complicated today that it is impossible to not want to learn too much about life and remain impartial or treat everything equally. If you were like me and just wanted to know the answer to everything without all these stories that we get so messed up in, well, the reason why you cannot know everything simply is because some things in this universe can never be explicit. It can only ever be implied, from example, through a story. The more human you are, the less things make sense, but that's the part of the fun. If there was an answer I could give you to how the universe works, it would not be special. It would just be machinery fulfilling its cosmic design. In other words, it would just be a big dumb food processor. But since nothing seems to make sense, or more correctly, is confusing with all kinds of opinions, when you find something or someone that does make sense to you, it is euphoria in all of its randomness. Well, there is a very famous line in scripture, and it says, "The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he never existed." This is never really explained, and it just rubs off as another cliche, really. But one way to understand this is by saying the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world God existed. Because the devil was once an angel, imposturing the role of God, it is only an illusion of a God in the first place. This is one of the most complicated lines in scripture that you might not get anywhere else, or really understand it. So you may have to go over that one a few times. Anyway, I will leave you with a quote, one of the most important or advanced understandings to humanity. Religion is a metaphor for astrology. Astrology is a metaphor for God. God is a metaphor for non-duality. Non-duality is you.